Well, welcome. We're glad that you're here. We are doing this workshop around brain research and particularly food and how that food affects our brain. A couple housekeeping things. I'm going to get the slides right up and we're going to dive in. Housekeeping, if you're on a Zoom call live with us, then there's a way you can put questions in the chat box. You should be able to pull up a chat box somewhere. That's the best way to ask questions. I'll put some information in there about how to connect to different things. And this will be recorded and put up onto our webpage as well. You can catch that later. So if you have questions later, and it's not live, there's a way, there'll be an email up here. You can send an email to me and get a hold of us that way, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. All right, I think we're going to dive in. I'm going to start my sharing of the screen and kind of kick into a little bit of introduction of me and my wife in a second here. So you should be seeing a slide, screen full of the slide for diet, nutrition, and the brain. And just quickly introducing myself, and my wife's not really present here, but she works with me closely. Mark and Becky Shep. My background is church educator. We actually juggled for a living for a good long time, 12 years full-time, under the name of Fitz, F-I-T-Z, Fitz. You can still find some stuff on YouTube under Fitz Family Anniversary, Fitz Family Jugglers, a number of things you can check it out. And these days we're focused on health and wellness and just trying to help people be better stewards of our bodies. And this is one way we can do that, by helping people pick up on some brain research that's been around a long time, but not many people know about some of this stuff. So we do weekly workshops. Most of those are in the form of watch parties now, but you can go to that website, and I'll have these up on the web page. That's my Facebook page, and that's my email. So check that out, send questions that you might have, etc., if you're not on this live anymore. All right, this is how I got interested in the brain. This is our family juggling troupe way back in the day, 1992, when we first started. 4 kids, 10, 8, 4, and 2 years old. And I came across, at that point, an article that connected success with reading with success with juggling. So in other words, take a struggling reader, teach that kid how to juggle, and the reading skills go measurably and significantly up. So that suckered me into paying attention to brain research, and I've been following it for a very long time, since 1992. And as I say, mostly around health and wellness. So that's the start. We're going to take a look at 3 things in these series of 3 workshops. 3 things that make a big difference in focus and brain function. Exercise, of course, today is diet and play. So I hope you check out the other ones as well. Very important. Always like to start with a joke. Here's an actual test for a lower elementary student. Her name was Hope. And as you see, the question was, name the quadrilaterals. And of course, she did exactly that. Bob, Kate, Harry, I don't know if there's Teddyson apparently is a name, even though she was given, as you can see, the answers the teacher was looking for. She was determined to do her own thing. So anyway, we're talking about the brain. I thought we'd do a little joke about the brain. Now, no joke. When you think about food and nutrition, the best thing to think about is think at a cellular level. Individual cells have to get nutrition in and waste out, and that's the critical thing to think about. It's a critical design, an amazing design, estimating at 75 trillion cells, okay? And we're replacing them all the time at varying speeds. So the brain, of course, the brain cells stay, they've been with us from the beginning, they'll stay with us till the end. But all the other cells basically get replaced at one speed or another. Some of them very quickly, like the ones in our gut and intestines, because that's such a caustic environment. Others less frequently, but the scientists say on average we replace them all about every 7 years. So at 66, I'm on my 8th time of replacing them. So if that means I got to replace them 8 times, every time I replace them all, that's 10 trillion new cells per year. Do the math, 300 million new cells are being made every day, folks. Every day, 300 million new cells. And those cells are either the raw material our body has is the food we put in our mouths. That's it. That's the raw material. So depending on what we put in, We either are making good clay bricks like this, good hard, good, healthy cells, or cardboard bricks, weak cells. And the only difference is how the raw material we give our brain, how we eat. In the exercise workshop, I talked about this kid in particular, and it showed the very dramatic change in his life because a teacher got him on a treadmill. That was the one thing that changed, dramatic change in his life. And of course, everybody can have a change for the good. It doesn't happen only with folks who are challenged. Everybody gains. This is another very important slide about movement, the importance of movement. You can see left side, Mr. Brain activity, right side, thunderstorm brain activity. And left side is after sitting for 20 minutes, right side after walking for 20 minutes. So you can see the dramatic difference in brain function in activity when we move. So movement, exercise, critically important. So today, I don't have a video like I did for exercise, but I do want to talk about another school, Appleton Central Alternative High School. Now, you might have run across this school actually in a movie that was done in a movie called Super Size Me. You may recognize that movie. A guy ate only McDonald's for a month, just about killed himself. Well, these alternative high schools are, as you may know, schools of last resort. If the student can't make it in the regular school, we try to give them the best shot possible at these alternative high schools. And Appleton was a tough place to be, this school. It had a police presence in the hallway because they needed it. Fights, horrible attitude, lousy grades. And there was a food company in Appleton that said, that believed that food affects behavior. And they said to the administration, we would like to show you the difference that's going to happen in your school by dramatically changing the food. We're not going to charge you another dime. We're just going to do it and for what you already pay, and you'll see the difference. And that's what they did. So 1 year later, the police presence was gone, didn't need it anymore. Grades were going up. Behavior was moderated, dramatically so, and it was a different school. And I called one of the counselors a while back. I said, how's it going? He said, great. In fact, he said the whole school district is feeding their kids the way that school did because they saw such a dramatic change. And he said, we still frisk at the door. Now, frisking at the door, you may expect they're looking for weapons. Well, if they find weapons, they're going to take the weapons away. They're not frisking for weapons. This school is frisking for junk food. They've taken the stance, zero tolerance for junk food on the campus. You can't even bring it on in your own backpack. The kids have learned, don't bring it. It gets taken away. We don't get it back. Okay. And think how many high schools are vending that stuff in the school. And it's actually part of the budget for the school. It's a fascinating thing. And the kids have learned there's no alternative. And I talk to some folks when they hear this, they go, well, we tried that in our school. It didn't work. I said, well, how'd you do it? Well, they said, we had the regular food aisle and then we had the healthy food. Well, of course, that's not going to work. And we'll tell you why in a little bit. The brain is wired for the food that we normally eat over time. And so we get wired for the bad stuff. That's what we think is normal. So the school fed them well, lots of whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, very small amounts of protein, and smaller yet, very small amounts of sugar, fats, and oils. And the kids, again, they learned. They ate the food, they learned, and they had what they called junk food days, once or twice a semester, just to kind of let the kids know the difference. They could bring anything they wanted on those junk food days, and they did. And they paid the price. They get headaches, they can't, their attention span disappears, they're tired, and they're going, I can't wait till we get back to the regular food tomorrow. They've learned over time the difference it makes in their functionality. And the administration learned, the teachers learned, the parents learned, everybody learned the difference that food makes in our functionality. All right, so obesity trends. You can get this off of the CDC website. Now, CDC is actually Center for Disease Control, but there's a letter and word missing that we never hardly ever see. CDC P for prevention. Well, why isn't it CDPC, prevention and then control? That's something to think about. Here's a series of slides that shows obesity trends over time. One slide per year. This one starts in 85. You can see this on the CDC website. And they're measuring what percentage of that population is 30 pounds or more overweight, starting for a 5'4" person. Okay, so either the state has white, no data, light blue, there's less than 10%, or darker blue, there's 10 to 14% in that category of obesity. Okay, let's check it out on a yearly basis. I'm going to start running the slides through. I just want to get you an impression, not very long on each slide, 86, 87, and you can see how it gains. Now, 91, new category, 15 to 19%. Notice where those new categories start. They'll start that same place every time. 95, 96, 97, new category, over 20%. All right, starts in that same breadbasket of the country. But guess what? Everybody catches up. And now 2001, another category, starting to get to these new categories faster, 25%. And now we're up to 2006. I think it changed in 2005, over 30%, and we'll go up to 2010 as far as I go. We're at more than 30% of the population. You can check CDC website out for the last 10 years, but the trend has in fact continued. That's not giving our best, and it's causing dramatic problems in terms of our healthcare and our ability to function as people. And folks, there is a lot of momentum, negative momentum in the wrong direction, steamroller in the wrong direction. We lived in Chicago for a while, western suburbs. This was a billboard we saw every day we drove into Chicago on I-88. Can't read it very well. It says DryerMedical.com. That's, at the time, they change over time because they're buying each other out. That was the medical provider in the western suburbs of Chicago. And of course, the text says, busy yourself with your life, will attend to your health. And of course, that's a horrible way of approaching your health. Eat, drink, and be merry, and then go to the doctor when I got problems. That's the problem that we've been having. We have to pay more attention ourselves. We're responsible for our health. And we certainly are glad that in my wife's case, with major health history, we're glad we have a medical community that can do well, but they're not the first line of defense. They're the last line of defense. Our ability to make good, healthy decisions is the first line of defense. Talking about maintenance, this is the instrument panel for a car I used to own, a Volkswagen Beetle, way back in the day. And you can see they got instructions on it. If you needed to know when to shift, they told you when to shift. That's the blinker mechanisms down at the bottom. And then that little red light, that's called the dummy light. When that light went on, you knew something was wrong, but you didn't know what. So you had to go figure it out. Well, these days they got all kinds of buttons and bells and whistles, and you got to have a degree to look it up and figure out what's wrong. But one thing has not changed: the dipstick in the engine. Engines still need oil, and if they're functioning at lower than that low mark on the dipstick, your engine could be in trouble. That's what we want to encourage you to think about in terms of what the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, says about the RDA, the recommended daily allowance. Folks, the RDA is the absolute bottom end of the dipstick. It is not the full amount you should get. It is the minimum amount you should get. And we sometimes think the opposite. We think, well, I'm getting the RDA. You're at the low end of the dipstick, and we have to do better than that. And then we talk about healthcare system or disease management system. Now, I'm recording this, doing this Zoom through the COVID-19 circumstance. Of course, that's changed everything. But think under normal circumstances, we have been functioning really under a disease management system like that billboard showed. Something goes haywire because we haven't been caring for ourselves very well, and we try to deal with the disease. And instead of health, preventative, staying healthy as much as we can because of how we're living. That's the thing. Now, brain break. I do this all the time. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to stand up, encourage you to do the same. That picture I showed you before, about 20 minutes in, and the kind of lack of activity in our brain is the reason I do that. It's a good way to just, the standing gets the blood flowing, oxygen and nutrition to the brain, and we kind of have a shot at staying better focused. All right, questions, by the way. Be sure to write your questions down in the chat box. If you're watching this afterwards, send me an email for the questions that you might have so far. Keep it going. All right, a little cartoon. Let's see, beef jerky, potato chips, gummy bears. That's all the major food groups. And of course, that's a kid's lunch at school. And when we were juggling for those 12 years, we saw a lot of school lunches. Folks, we saw a lot of horrible school lunches. We saw some good school lunches. But to be fair, we also saw some horrible home packed lunches and also some good home packed lunches. Clearly, in our experience, the unhealthy far outweighed the healthy in terms of lunches. That's the food for the day. That's the fuel for the day. That's the raw material for that kid and us, by the way, to keep making those new cells and functioning well. We got to do better. And I mentioned this before about those two lines in schools when they're trying to get kids to eat the good stuff. Our brains are tuned, neurons are tuned to the food we normally eat, whatever that is. If it's healthy or unhealthy, it doesn't matter. Our neurons get tuned to the normal food that comes down the gullet. If it's unhealthy, we're tuned to the unhealthy stuff. So when this school that these parents talked about didn't work, is well, that's because the kids' brains are telling them the good stuff is not the proper stuff. And you have to retune. So good news and bad news. You can retune the neurons. Here's the bad news. It does not happen overnight. It takes weeks. In fact, it really takes months. It's not broccoli on Friday in the school lunch cafeteria, and then on Monday, all the kids are going, broccoli, broccoli. No, it's not going to work that way. It's over time that the healthy stuff becomes the norm, becomes what's considered right. Now, food addiction. We learn about ourselves by studying some animals. Rats are one of those. Here's an example of a study they did about food addiction. They took 3 groups of rats. Group A, healthy rats. They ate healthy rat food, whatever that is, at healthy intervals, whatever that is, and they were regular, normal, not obese at all, healthy rats. Group B, what did they do? They took regular healthy rat food, same thing, everything the same, except 1 hour a day. They opened a trap door to a walkway that went across to a table filled with human junk food. Well, they're curious. They go across the walkway, learn what they got over there, Twinkies, ding dongs, whatever you want to think. Here's what happened. Every day at the same time that door opened up, the rats learned, okay, hey, guys, wait, it's coming at 10 o'clock. And they go across at 10 o'clock and binge eat for the hour because they know that's all they got. And then they come back and, of course, they're not going to eat the regular food or very little of it. Group C, what do? Reverse that. They let the rats live 23 hours a day, 23 hours a day on the junk food table, open the trap door the opposite direction to the good healthy food. Rats went over there to check it out and basically ignored the healthy food because they were hooked on the unhealthy stuff. That's what had happened. They did not want anything but the junk food. It got worse than that. You know, when dogs, and they bark and you put a little collar on, and when they bark, they shocked, the collar shocks them, or when they have a line, a perimeter fence with buried cable, and when they cross that, the collar shocks them again. It doesn't kill them, but they don't cross the barrier. They don't bark anymore. Same thing with this walkway. They set these patterns in groups A, B, and C, and then they said, okay, let's see how badly they want the junk food, and they electrified it, made them a little hungry, and group A opened the gate, it was electrified. First rat hits that and gets shocked, and nobody else goes across. They didn't even look at it anymore. Forget it. Group B, boy, they desperately wanted to go across. They're milling around the electrified grid. Bzz, try again. Bzz. They did not go across, but they were desperately trying to figure out a way to do it. Group C, what did they do? They blasted across. They just shocked themselves because they were determined, desperate to get to the food they were addicted to. And that's what happens to us, folks. We get addicted to unhealthy food. Now, I know cartoons oversimplify, but this says some important things. Poverty in most of the world implies that kind of body type. Poverty in America often means this, obesity. It shouldn't be that it's the cheapest food to buy the junk food. Now, I want to say clearly as I can, it is possible to eat healthy and not eat expensive. But that's a difficult thing to do, and it takes some knowledge and some skill, and so we have to train people, and if they don't get trained, they're going to eat the cheap food, and the cheap food is not healthy. All right, now, 2 critical questions we also have to think about in terms of food and the brain. One is toxins. Our food is full of toxins, and we have to think about supplements. Are we going to take them or not? First of all, toxins. One of 2 things happen with the toxins in our food. Either they damage the brain cells, or they confuse the brain cells. You see those 2 options there. And well, I'm going to back up one. Damaging. Um, there's pesticides in our urine to indicate that it's coming in, and that's doing some damage to our brain cells, and then confusing the brain cells. This is an example of there's a substance called BPA, bisphenol A, and it's part of the residue of plastic bottles. And we've learned that that stuff is not healthy. It looks to the body like a synthetic hormone. And so we now have girls going through puberty at second grade. Well, second grade is way too early. They're not healthy at all. Why is that happening? There's no clear definitive answer, but there's some theories. One theory is the obesity crisis is an issue. As our bodies get overly large for our age, there's some mechanism inside our bodies that say, well, we're big enough to reproduce, puberty. There's another theory that says this bisphenol A is a hormone-like substance to the body, and the body gets enough of that bisphenol A, the BPA in, and it flips the switch, the hormone switch. That's what hormones are. The hormones are on-off switches for the body. And so bisphenol A flips the hormone switch. And lots of things are happening in our bodies that are not good because of the toxins in our food supply. And they're learning. This is a small sample, I grant you, 163 people screened, but 90% of those 163 had detectable levels of 62 different chemicals. Some of them are listed there. And they're all chemicals that have been known to disrupt brain development. So think about this. Pregnant women, 90% of them had those chemicals in there. And then we wonder why we have a growth in things like autism and who knows what. There's lots of things happening because of toxins. Now, we also think there's not much I can do about that. You see the company is Kellogg's. The two packages are one from England, one from the US, almost look exactly the same, except for look at the coloring they use in the US versus England. Europe and England has basically said as a society, we aren't going to buy a synthetic coloring anymore, and they don't. So guess what? The companies who want to sell in Europe find all their alternatives, and they find them. Beetroot red, annatto, paprika extract, and instead in this country we still have the synthetic colors. Why? Because we still buy them. So foods get put on or off shelf, taken off shelves because the consumers, that's you and I, either buy them or don't buy them. We do have some power. Now, a critical variable is about food. Food companies who produce the food go this direction with their consideration. They're most concerned with cost, and of course, that translates to them for profit. Then they worry about visual appeal. They have trained us to only want perfectly looking food. There's an ugly food movement that says, no, ugly food is still healthy. Buy it anyway. And then shelf life. It's got to last a long time at the store. That means it's less expensive, and also at the home. It's got to taste good. It's got to have good nutritional value. But those are the last two things, taste and nutritional value, that the food companies concern themselves with. We want to concern ourselves with the other direction. Start with nutritional value and taste. Of course, we want shelf life. And well, we better learn again about visual appeal, that ugly food is okay. And we have to be able to afford it, of course. But we want food that is nutritionally strong and tasty. All right, you can see some of those fruits and vegetables at the bottom. Not going to sell them in a store because we wouldn't buy them. We've been trained. So now supplementation. Here's another question. I'm going to talk through 7 factors that means we aren't getting all we need in terms of nutrition from our food supply chain, from the grocery store. It is an excellent way to get what the body needs, and actually now it's more than 70% of the population in this country and around the world are taking it, one form or another. They've made the decision, for whatever reasons behind that. They've said, we're not getting enough from the food supply, we're going to supplement, and they buy it. You do have some control this way, but you have to understand it's an unregulated business, and so it's buyer beware. Our experience says it makes a difference. My wife has had 3 rounds of cancer, a lot of side effects from the cancer treatments of chemo and radiation. We've been using a very high quality supplement since 1992, the very first round of cancer, and she is now 28, approaching 29 years out, and doing quite well. We think in large part because we're giving the body we call it filling the gaps. Okay, so supplements, why not? Well, it depends what the nutritional level is. On variety is one thing. GMOs and all the ways we're adjusting, we're changing the kind of plant that we have. And our concern is, and the company we work with, their concern is, those folks are not concerned about taste and nutritional level. They're concerned about other things. Things like transportation for tomatoes, as an example. Tomatoes come from a long way off. And if the tomato that we ate 40 years ago would be put in a truck and shipped across country, we'd have salsa at the end of the trip because it wouldn't stand up. Tomatoes these days stand up because they're much harder. Well, the question our scientists posed to the GMO scientists was, do you know about the nutritional level? Well, the scientists said, we don't know. We're not testing that. That's not our concern. Our concern is transportation. So we have to be concerned about that ourselves. Production method, synthetic versus natural fertilizer. Urine samples in suburban Chicago. Now this is close in suburban Chicago, like River Forest. It's not out like by Algonquin where they're right by the cornfields and you're getting sprayed on you. No, this is almost urban, and every kid in the school that was tested had positive samples of pesticides in the urine. 1 week on organic food, urine pesticides all gone. Makes a difference. Ripeness. Climacteric is a term that means that the nutrients, climacteric means you can take the fruit off early and it still ripens to look like a tomato again. You can pull a tomato off early, but it will look like a red tomato by the time it gets to the store or in your window if you pull them off early from your garden. Challenge is the nutrients are often only put in by the plant into the fruit and the vegetables at the very, very ripest time of the fruit and vegetable. And so if you take it early, you're leaving nutrients behind in the ground. That's a concern. Post-harvest handling, bruising that happens, etc. Processing and packaging, the pre-cut carrots. Folks, they don't grow those little carrots that way. They're cut that way, and they're irradiated, and there's coatings to put on them. Apples, if there's apples that are pre-cut, those got coatings on them to make sure they don't look bad. Again, we won't buy if it looks brown, and we have to be concerned about all of those kind of things. And then storage. Apples is an example. They have if this is the spring of the year, we're typically in the spring of the year eating almost year-old apples because they've stored apples in a very inert environment, suck all the oxygen out, just inert gases in there, and so they sit a very long time. Now they're not spoiling, but what's happening to the level of nutrition over that length of time? And then transportation affects things, temperature, humidity damage, a lot of things. Now, blue zones. I'm not going to say much more about this, but it's a great resource. I want to just mention it to you. Bluezones.com. Blue zones are 6 places around the world where people lived to a very ripe old age, often into their hundreds. 6 of them. And so there's people who study those 6 places and trying to find patterns. What are they doing there that we can emulate to live a healthier life? And that's exactly what this website does. It describes those places and gives the patterns that they're finding, that places like small towns and big towns, Fort Worth, Texas, for example, is trying hard to become a blue zone by intentionally changing how they do things. It's fascinating to watch. So check it out, bluezones.com. Okay, questions again. I don't see any questions on the Zoom call here, but if you have some, put them in or email to me later on. Okay, now, how do we make good decisions about food in the store? This is not too old a packaging. Took this, just a couple of months ago. And it's a recognizable brand and variety, a Raisin brand. And here's some things that the company wants us to think about. Now, by the way, I should say, Heart Healthy could not be put on a morning breakfast cereal anymore because the government has banned that. You can't even call breakfast cereals healthy. But they could at this point. Lots of fiber, antioxidants. Now, all of these things are true. They're not lying to us on the front, but they're highlighting the best things possible, protein, and way down at the bottom there, you see something that we better pay close attention to, but they're not highlighting at all. Here's that bottom part. First of all, what's the serving size? 1¼ cups. I'll tell you, I've got more than 1¼ cup in my serving bowl when I take cereal, and 210 milligrams of sodium. That's about 10% of the daily need, daily value. That's a lot of sodium in the first breakfast bowl of cereal. And 18 grams of sugar. Well, is that high or low? Well, if you would say, is Lucky Charms healthier or is Raisin Bran healthier? Most of us would probably have said Raisin Bran. Turns out Lucky Charms has half the sugar that Raisin Bran does, and 18 grams is about half of what the sugar you'd find in a soda. So back in the day when we had cereal, I'm 66 years old, Kellogg's Corn Flakes was not hardly at all sugared, hardly any sugar on that cereal. We had to put it on ourselves at the breakfast table, teaspoon of sugar. I was happy if I could get 2 teaspoons on and my mother would stop me. How many teaspoons in 18 grams of sugar? Holy mackerel, 4½ teaspoons of sugar. I had sugar left in the bottom of the bowl with 1 teaspoon of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. And OJ per year. I don't have that to show you here, but when my family traveled, we would regularly go to Starbucks because they were standard. We could expect to find the same thing at each place, and that was helpful for us. Didn't ever drink coffee. We tried to stay away from the sugary snacks in the top of the display case. But they had some orange juice there. Well, orange juice sounds pretty healthy. So it was a container about so high, and I didn't pay attention to the serving size. Guess what? It was 2 servings. I drank it like it was 1. And you look at the side, and if I would drink half of that bottle once per day for a year, how many pounds of sugar will I have consumed in a year? 21 pounds of sugar. From half a bowl of that, half a cup of that, half a serving, excuse me, a full serving, half of that bottle, what I'm trying to get out, what I'm trying to say, once a day for a year. Sugar has lots and lots of juice in it, and we have lacked the pulp that goes with the fresh fruit. Okay, so now I know, folks, you are not going to go to the store and look at the side panel for everything you buy. I know that's not going to happen, but I want you to think about this side panel to help get some patterns in place for what's healthier or not. Excuse me. We have serving size, usually it's in grams, and we have calories per serving, okay? In this case, with milk, with skim milk, 250 calories. Add whole milk and that goes up. But let's just say, do some math. What number is bigger and by how much? So if you do the math, there's a term called calorie density. If you do the math, it's about 4 calories for every gram in this Raisin Bran. Okay, well, how does that compare? Here's carrots. Grams per serving, calories per serving. Do the math, it's 0.3 calories per gram. Way different than the breakfast cereal. Now, well, here's Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Serving size, grams, calories per gram. Do the math, 3 calories per gram. One more thing, oil, vegetable oil, way, way more concentrated in terms of calories per gram. 9 calories per gram. That's way more than the fruits and vegetables. And that's why you have to be careful, see at the bottom there, how you mix this with other stuff. If I'm going to say, I'm going to eat way more healthy, I'm going to have a well-mixed salad at every meal. All kinds of fruits and vegetables and greens, great. And then you smother that thing with dressing, you basically negated any good you would get from the salad because you have put so many calories in with that oil. So think back to these Raisin Bran. Calorie density of 4 calories per gram compared to Ben & Jerry's ice cream at 3 calories per gram. Now, I'm not advocating eating Ben & Jerry's for breakfast. The point is, what we thought was going to be healthy, who'd have thought that there was more sugar per serving in Raisin Bran than in ice cream? Nobody. But yet there it is. And yet all of the front of that box wants us to say, healthy, eat this, it's good for you. And we got to be better consumers. Now, again, people are not going to look at the side of the box for everything they buy. I understand that. That's why we look at categories. So calorie densities by group. What are the groups? Far left, veggies. Then comes fruit. Then comes unrefined complex carbs. That's a group called things like whole wheat, multigrain bread, brown rice, bran cereal, oatmeal potatoes, and sweet potatoes. Okay, then legumes, then fatty protein, which is meat, consider that meat, okay? And then refined processed carbs, that's white flour, white sugar, white rice, cakes, cookies, crackers, pretzels, candies, and the ever famous donuts. Oh yeah. And then of course all the red categories, junk food, nuts and seeds, oils and fats, high in calories per gram, 45 times higher on the right side than on the left side. That's a huge difference. And of course, most of the healthy nutrients are on the left half of the graph in the green category. Now, I have to be careful. Look at the far right, nuts and seeds, oils and fats. At the bottom there, you see 2 green bars. Both of those categories have some very, very, very important nutrients in them, but we have to be cautious about the volume we take, and so we have to get it in concentrated forms and be cautious again about the level. So it's important that we feel full when we eat. That's why diets that restrict food intake are so hard to follow. Our body wants to be full. So the left side of this graph, high satisfaction because there's a lot of food in veggies and fruits for very little calories. Far right side, low satisfaction with high calories because there's so little volume with such a high level of calorie content. And the danger of overeating, of course, then is very low with the fruits and vegetables and very high on the right side with junk food, nuts and seeds, oils and fats. And of course, you can see the red letters, avoid calorie-rich and processed food, and you know what that spells. Now, breakouts, they did an experiment. Under the bottom, you see ad libitum. That means eat until you're pleasantly full, okay? That's what they said to people in these experiments. They took categories of food. So the first category was only fruits and vegetables. That's all the people ate, and the people could eat as much as they wanted till they're pleasantly full. What happened? Everybody lost weight in that category. Next category, only unrefined complex carbs and legumes. Everybody lost weight if they were normally active. That's 30 to 60 minutes a day. That's not a lot. And next category was just meats. Everybody gained weight except elite athletes. Think Michael Phelps, the swimmer. And then last category, from refined processed carbs, donuts, all the way through, everybody gained weight, including Michael Phelps, even in hard training, okay? And of course, you see diabetes and obesity are on that far right side of the graph, the whole right side of the graph, basically. So now, how do you buy things in the store? Again, I know you're not going to look at the side panel every time you look at something. That's why you group things. I'm going to buy lots of fruits and vegetables. I'm going to buy lots of unrefined complex carbs and legumes. I'm going to buy way less fatty protein and way less refined complex carbs and junk food. And then again, I got to make sure I get, wrong spelling there, juts, I got to get appropriate amounts of the right nutrients, the critical nutrients in the categories that are nuts and seeds and oils and fats. Okay, now what? Well, we have to care more about how we eat, and we want to give God our best. That's our perspective. Good stewards of our bodies. We got to think about the cafeteria at schools and elsewhere, and we have to look in our community for opportunities. Lots of times, the folks just don't know the impact that healthier food has on our brains, and we just think it doesn't matter, and it does matter. Here's a great book. My wife, again, Cancer History. My wife found this book and read the book and said, Mark, you got to read pages 3 to 22. It gives a look at the microscopic world inside of you. Now, after I read that, she agreed with me. She said, boy, in fact, she was the one that said this. She said, now I know why I want to give my body the best nutrients possible, the best food possible, because of what we found out about how, at a microscopic level, at a cellular level, how we function. Another great book, Cancer Fighting Kitchen. These folks actually come out and do workshops. If you're eating healthy for cancer, you're eating healthy for everybody. It's a good place to go. And then one last couple words, symptoms versus problems. When we deal with ourselves and the medical community, we tend to mask the symptoms. We have a symptom, let's take digestive stuff. We have gas, we have bloating and gas. Well, that's a symptom of something going on. What do? We take something that tamps down the symptom, but may not, in fact, correct the problem. That's why it's critical to have doctoring that understands the system and is not just giving us things that mask the problem. And we have to pay attention to that ourselves because we're responsible for ourselves. We are actually fixing the problem and giving a solution. And guess what? When we eat healthy, basically most things take care of themselves. It's incredible, the design of our body and how well it can do when we give it the best food possible. Okay, so there's weekly workshops, realign2thedesign.com. At that full address, check it out. I kind of put up all of our workshops there. That's our Facebook page. We announce things there as well. And again, that's the email. So check that out. I'm going to get off of this, stop sharing. I do want you to check that out. Email me, fatherfitz@gmail.com if you have questions. Again, thank you for being a part of this. I hope it was helpful. Tell others about this at the Facebook links and let people know about it. These will be up and ongoing, available for anybody that wants to see them. And we hope good things for you and your family around health and for you to make good decisions about those things as well. Thanks.